some tough talk ahead of the meeting from Wisconsin Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher. Watch this.
They obviously have downplayed the spy balloon incident. They haven't sanctioned anybody for the genocide in Xinjiang. There's been no meaningful investigation into the origins of COVID. This is all part of a broader trend of the administration delaying defensive actions, covering up human rights abuses in order to revive diplomatic and economic engagement with the Chinese Communist Party.
So Congressman Gallagher joins me now. Great to have you with us today, Congressman. It is interesting because I think that the presentation of the country in this moment really says where they're coming from, right? And as Rebecca just pointed out, he's got John Kerry with him, I should say, and Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary. And we know that the president just essentially said last night at this fundraiser that this reestablishment of American leadership in the world is evidenced in this meeting. And he says, look, they've got a lot of problems, folks. And he's talking about the Chinese economy. So that's the approach. That's what he's putting on his forward foot here, Congressman.
Well, since the G20 summit, the president has been making that argument. It's a very dangerous argument. The idea that because she has domestic economic problems, he's going to become less aggressive abroad. Since he said that initially in Vietnam, she has undermined the argument because he's gotten more aggressive. All we have done is normalize an unprecedented tempo of pressure against Taiwan. And if we're wagering the fate of the free world on the fact that she has to deal with domestic economic and demographic issues, that's a stupid bet, because it is just as likely that she could get more aggressive in order to distract from those issues, or he could Putinize. Because he is surrounded by yes men, he has no feedback loops that would allow him to make sense of things, and therefore he could just make a foolish decision. So I think that's irresponsible rhetoric coming from the president. And my only point in making the comments you played before is that this meeting itself has come at a great cost. We have taken our foot off the gas in terms of sanctions, defensive action, in order just for the president to sit down with Xi. So even if they come up with some working group on fentanyl, which, listen, I hope will be successful, it has come at a cost. And for some reason, we pay cash up front to the Chinese, but their check is always in the mail.
Yeah. Well, with regard to fentanyl, I remember there was a time when President Trump was given assurances from the Chinese leadership that they were going to crack down on sending fentanyl precursor chemicals to Mexico. I don't think that ever happened, evidenced on the number of people that we've had killed in this country with fentanyl.
No, and they scheduled fentanyl about 5 years ago, but all that happened is that they started to move to precursor production. They shipped the precursors to the drug trafficking organizations in Mexico, and those flow across the southern border and kill tens of thousands of Americans every year, which is why we've asked the administration to press the CCP on know your customer rules for fentanyl precursor production. If you go back even further to the Obama administration, and I do believe with Kerry and Yellen taking the lead, we are seeing a reversion to the Obama-era foreign policy on China. Remember, Xi Jinping stood in the Rose Garden and promised, to lessen cyber intrusions in America, as well as reduce the militarization of the South China Sea, and then promptly went and increased his activity on both of those fronts. Just goes to show we have to be very careful and have a clear-eyed view of who we're dealing with in terms of this Marxist, Leninist organization that is the Chinese Communist Party.
And it seems that countries are seizing on this moment because you see how aggressive, as Rebecca Heinrichs was pointing out, and you have with us many times, Congressman, how aggressive they are on the seas surrounding China and cutting off Philippine ships and all of this aggressive nature. Then you see Russia also very aggressive in Ukraine, and Iran, who's China's new friend as well, essentially invading Israel through their proxy Hamas. So a lot on the table. Thank you very much, Congressman. Always good to have you with us.